Great.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. Today is April 9th, 2026, and you have joined us for the Main Street, Rhode Island monthly roundtable for the month of April. The topic is activating public spaces. My name is Jillian Finkel. I am the Deputy Director of Grow Smart Rhode Island and the Director of Main Street, Rhode Island, who's your host for this monthly series. We'll hope you'll check out our past roundtables as well as continue to join us for the future ones. They are every month, a different topic each month. Um, for just a shout out to our sponsors today, Rhode Island Energy is the founding sponsor of Main Street, Rhode Island, and we welcome the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, who's joined us as a corporate member of our Main Street, Rhode Island program this year. So thank you to them for making today possible. For those who don't know, Main Street Rhode Island is the coordinating program for the state, aligned with Main Street America. Main Street America is the national organization that champions what is known as the 4 points approach to Main Street revitalization and management. There are 4 points involved in their Main Street approach. That really look at all aspects of place and making it successful. And we try with this program to touch on all of them because we're trying to help cultivate these in our Rhode Island Main Street districts all simultaneously at the same time. So also invited to please check that out and contact us for more information. Um, and today, we're very excited to welcome our presenter, CJ Opperthauser. He has been for the past 5 years the executive director of Friends of Congress Square Park in Portland, Maine. He is also a freelance placemaking consultant, but many of you probably remember him as Grow Smart Rhode Island's former director of placemaking and training. Where he was with us before his current position, and before that worked at Waterfire and as CityWorks Fellow with Down City Design. You're familiar with that. He holds a BS in English from Central Michigan University and a master's in creative writing and poetry from Miami University. And he is also just a truly wonderful human that I am so lucky to know, and we're so lucky to have with us today. So before we jump into his presentation, and I will just note we are recording this session, and we are planning to have a time at the end for questions and discussion. But please do, as you have thoughts, feel free to put them in the chat. Also, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. It looks like we have a lot of guests from outside Rhode Island, and we're so excited to have you. So please do say hello so we know you're here. But I did want to say, as CJ and I were planning for the session today, this idea of community ownership came up, and he'll talk about that in his presentation. But I realized that I had actually experienced this myself, and he asked if I would share that as a story to provide some context. And so when I moved to Rhode Island, I, like many people, perhaps sought out a religious institution to become a member and join, and it was lovely. It was nice and friendly. People were welcoming, but the way it kind of worked is that the staff and the clergy and maybe a few of the volunteer board members would plan the things, and everyone else kind of showed up, and we chat, a few people, and then we'd leave. And like I said, it was lovely. But about 7 or 8 years ago, we had a new leader come in who started demanding that people participate actively in a way that, to be honest, was jarring to me at the time. Me saying that if you want dinner at this event, you're going to have to come cook. And I was kind of shocked, like, what? I have to come cook dinner? But I wanted dinner, so I came. And that kind of became true more and more in different aspects of the entire operation, services and events. But as that started happening, I also was noticing that more people were involved, so we were able to do more stuff. And then the stuff we were doing was really what the people wanted because it was coming directly from them. And people were really invested because it was them that was doing it. And it was really kind of magic to watch it evolve over this period where now our our membership is growing. It feels very alive, connected. The fundraising is better. Um, People are really dedicated, and and it really was something I'd never experienced before. And as I look at it and say, is it harder to do that? Of course, the answer is yes. But I realized, wait, that's kind of the point. And actually, that's kind of the point with Main Street, and that Main Street America has said all along that this is a self-help program and it is community led, and that. Of course, that's what we want, but I didn't really internalize it until I had experienced myself what that truly means that people are truly empowered to be actively involved in making their place better. And that is what we're trying to do with Main Street. And and certainly, whether you're talking about a specific park or you're talking about a whole district as the public space, we're really talking about the commons, right? The area that we all share and we all have responsibility for. So CJ is going to talk to us more about that and about how his organization is able to pull off 200 events per year in a very actually quite small physical location. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and stop sharing and turn it over to CJ.
Well, thank you, Jillian. Thank you to Grow Smart for having me. It's a pleasure to reconnect with everybody there. Um, are you seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Um, we're going to talk about activating public spaces. And I'm going to mostly be doing that by giving kind of an overview of what we do here in Congress Square Park. But I'm also just going to kind of uh, wax philosophic about public space just a little bit, if you'll indulge me. I know we're all here largely concerned about public space from the vantage point of a main street, a lot of small towns, um, and medium and larger ones perhaps as well. But I think that some of the stuff I'm going to talk about applies in a broader sense to anyone concerned about public space, whether you have a little lot on your street that you want to activate more, or a whole park system, or what have you. Um, so, uh, from my kind of core deep belief about public space, Friends at Congress Square Park, our entire mission is to manage and activate one public space downtown, and really um, just for its own sake. I mean, we kind of pitch in order to get funding that we're doing it for the sake of arts access. We have a lot of arts programming, or for the sake of the safety of downtown, which is partly true, or for the sake of, like the economics of stimulating some of the local businesses around us, which is also partly true. But ultimately, for me, this is what kind of drives me in my thinking with what we do, which is, the why is that public space is really the one truly accessible, equitable platform. So you don't have to pay to get in. You don't need a smartphone to access it. You don't need the internet to access this commons for human connection, communication, expression, and simply being. And I think especially in this era where I think at least I am very concerned about, you know, loneliness as a kind of epidemic that's ongoing, an increasing social divide, threats to democracy. Public space is really one of the better reliable platforms to address a lot of these things, and to just be human beings together. So that's what kind of keeps me. That's what the vision is all about with us, at least under my leadership. In order to do that, we do this thing called placemaking. Just really briefly, from Project for Public Spaces website. If you're not familiar with them, highly recommend checking them out. I think it's just pps.org. Placemaking is a participatory process for shaping public space that harnesses the ideas and assets of the people who use it. Not unlike Jillian's lovely story, right? I mean, it's the same thing. It's kind of having buy-in and helping shape the commons that everyone uses. This started with ideas from Jane Jacobs, Death and Life of Great American City, especially, and then William Holly White, who really emphasized what you can learn just from observing public space, and kind of broke it down into some core elements that I'll get to a little bit. Um, Ultimately, for us, I think, on a kind of smaller on the ground scale, it means, and it looks like, injecting a public space with the right activities and amenities with the community in mind or kind of in the kitchen with you to sustain vibrancy, community building, and healthy use. And ultimately, to me, you're just really cultivating public life in your community.
It's almost 50 degrees.
All the philosophizing is mostly out of the way. So here we are. This is Congress Square Park. This is where I spend a lot of my time. Um, or if you're not familiar, we're in kind of the center of downtown Portland in the Arts District, as we call it. So across the street there, with the building with the kind of half circles, is the Museum of Art. To the right is the State Theater, which has a lot of live music and other performances. And we're really surrounded by a whole swath of restaurants and coffee shops and everything. So we're on a busy corner. We have two corners of the park that are kind of walled in. The park used to be a building. It's a long story. And then two sides that face the open street. So we're kind of a nice, I think of us as a little bit of like an eddy along a river of, sidewalk activity. And so we get a lot of foot traffic, but it's also a great place for people watching and a little bit of a tucked in respite from movement and everything on the main streets there. So this is our kind of platform for placemaking. And we express placemaking in really two arms that each have their own committees in our tiny nonprofit. Uh, First is programming, and the second is operations. So I'll talk about programming first. Um, so we do, like Jillian said, we do about 200 events and activities a year. It is a lot. The number is kind of staggering to me at the end of every year, but they range in size and scope and focus from on the far left. There is a language table group that pops up in the park like 4 or 5 times a week with different languages, Portuguese, French, even English for people that are learning English, practicing English. We do dances, concerts, films, art workshops, markets, circus performances, dances. I think I said dances, but like dance performances, like ballet and stuff. A little bit of theater, really anything. My kind of mo with our programming is essentially stuff that really offers connection between people. Are my favorites, which I'll get to in a second, and stuff that really surprises. If you're walking on the street, what is the thing that's going to delight you and surprise you the most, where you're going to maybe actually pause your day and come in and share space with us. um, and in the spirit of, again, PPS's definition of placemaking and Jillian's lovely story, um, it's a community platform for expression, sharing, and gathering first and foremost, but it's an invitation to cultivate a relationship to this space. And so we, like I said, we kind of let people in to the kitchen with us. And it helps develop a sense of belonging and a co-ownership of the space, which is really ultimately what we depend on to keep Congress Square Park not just active, but really cared for um, outside of our capacity, which is just me. I'm the one staff, and we have a bunch of volunteers, but it really takes a community to care for this space. And I find the best way to do that, again, is to kind of develop a sense of co-ownership. So a lot of events are simply me saying yes to great ideas. The language tables are one of those. And I'll get to some more in just a second, but I want to add on the bottom here, you'll notice triangulation. And I believe that was a William Holly White concept. And the general thought there is, if Jillian and I are walking, or we're sitting in a park together, we don't know each other, say, and suddenly there's a juggler, right? That's the kind of 1, 2, 3 triangulation in which now Jillian and I have something to observe together, to maybe share that experience together as strangers, and ideally talk about the thing that we're observing. And that's when you start building connections between people. So triangulation is just sort of grease in the wheels that helps build connections between people and initiates conversation and a sense of sharing. So I think about that with our programming as well. Um, but back to just saying yes to stuff. That really is how we develop, I think, a large degree of the kind of co-ownership and the feeling that this public space is truly everybody's when individual people get to help shape it. And we really, really do thrive on that, especially with, again, one staff person and a very limited budget. I don't think we could do about half the events that we do without having kind of achieved this status as a vehicle for people's event ideas that people can come to us with, an event that maybe fits our kind of ethos a little bit. We say yes to most things. We say no to some stuff. But this is a great example. So this is, I think, an image that I shared to be used in the promo for this, and I thought it was a great opportunity to talk about it. So this is an annual BIPOC food and music festival, food and art festival, called Tender Table. It's probably my favorite thing that we do now. I think we've done it for 4 years. Um, the whole evening of different food makers from, bringing different cuisines from around the world. Sometimes there's poetry readings, sometimes there's just music. This is a taiko drumming group that came out from Boston. And I mean, it really packs the place, and it brings different crowds in, different segments of the community, and that we may not reach as well. Not just this event, but saying yes to all sorts of events from different people in the community achieves that. And so this, to me, Tender Table just exemplifies sort of the whole concept of why it's good to say yes and lend your resources to helping events like this happen. And I really also prioritize, I love the big spectacles, don't get me wrong. But I try to put our resources toward the smaller, intimate events that really facilitate conversation and making new connections. And that's the real work, I think, of building community in a public space. So on the left, we have it's our Blurb Club. It's a book group. It's every 2 weeks. It's been going for 5 years now. And basically, you show up with whatever you're reading. So there's no assigned book, and it takes like no oversight. It's the easiest lift in the world. And believe it or not, 5 years later, that core of people that you're seeing there, we're still kind of the core group that shows up every 2 weeks, and it's grown, but it really just has created a whole friend group around this event. And we sometimes do chess. We used to have weekly chess. We've kind of fallen off because it takes someone to really organize that. But it's another thing that you're activating the space, which is great, but you're really building community through the public space as well, and helping the sense of belonging really grow. And then as far as triangulation, this is maybe my favorite example. So this was a drum group in which people would show up with drums that they had, and you just kind of jam for a while, create a beat, and just like kind of swirl in and out around that beat with a bunch of strangers. But the best part is that you could either watch or you could join in and participate. And so it's like it does it all. You can build connections and maybe make some new friends, but it's also just a weird, wonderful thing to see happening. And if you want to sit with your lunch or just kind of gawk at it, like that's just as good. So to me, this was sort of a pinnacle of triangulation. And in addition to saying yes to events and fostering co-ownership that way, we have a fairly robust volunteer program. And again, to Jillian's story, why I loved that story is just like, you can't say enough about how impactful it is to just create opportunities to get involved. That's what really grows a sense of co-ownership and buy-in in really anything, but I think especially in something as deeply shared as public space, where really anyone can get involved because it's everyone's. And so we have our gardening volunteers over there on the left, and we have a little free library on the right. And it sounds small and they're really common, but people know how to use it such that it's not just books. It's like people are aware of who uses the park, and so we have a lot of canned food that goes in there, or like socks and things like that. And it really helps develop this sense of co-ownership, I think, in a tiny, surprising, impactful way. Um, the people that are using that library are actually, that's Cecily, who owns the restaurant next door, and Cecily's kid. Um, and just it helps create this like, oh yeah, that's my little library. That's where I go to check on books and things like that. And all of those to me are invitations of belonging and co-ownership. And this was a lovely photo, just what this all can lead to, in my opinion. So we do markets pretty frequently. So we have a ton of vendors that are very used to setting up in our space, and I think they feel at home in our space. And this was a couple years ago, but you can see the chalkboard sign there says there's it's a movie night. So I wasn't planning on coming to the park before the movie night because it's a long night. But I got a couple messages from some artists, and they were like, "Hey, we have a free day. We wanted to just like set up in the park. Is that cool?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And so just on its own, organically, without me having to do anything, there's this kind of mini market that just popped up on the sidewalk. And activated our space, and it was because these vendors have been involved with our programming for a couple of years, and they just feel this sense of um, enablement that I love. And so this to me is like the dream of what you do it all for, is to have this organic programming that doesn't hardly take um, any labor or organizing. It just kind of is the community expressing itself. And I want to talk about we don't stop in the summer. When I started here, we just did 6 months of programming, and it felt wrong to me that we leave the park fairly dormant for the other 6 months. So I started up this weekly event series that's 5 years strong now, called S'mores Night. Um, and it's every Thursday from 4 to 6, December through February. So we typically have, more or less 12. Um, and it's really simple. I mean, it's 3 fire pits. We hand out s'mores ingredients. Um, and some of the community, like, you get a lot of people that walk by and didn't know it was happening, but you get a lot of people that build it into their weekly routine. And I mean, it's like I said, it's a really low lift, but I gotta tell you, like, as far as building connection, this has to be the most bang for our buck, because you're kind of putting people in enough tight proximity where they're going to strike out conversation with each other and share, they just share that kind of intimate space. And speaking of triangulation, everyone's kind of breaking bread together and roasting marshmallows, and it's sort of silly, but it's like this age old human instinct to just sit around a fire and chat and eat. And so the most mixing and mingling of demographics and backgrounds and whatever I see is at our s'mores nights. And it's really heartwarming. And we also have, like, we'll do shadow puppets or some choirs or something to supplement, but the core of it is really the simple act of sitting around a fire together. Um, we've also started leaving out a lot of our furniture in the winter as well. So not the cafe tables and chairs, but we have Adirondacks, and we have these movable, colorful benches that these folks are sitting on in the foreground here, and those stay out year round. And I'll get a little bit more into furniture in just a second, but it's amazing. I mean, even in Portland, Maine, we have a few days in the winter where it's maybe 35 and dry, and people yearn to be in public space. People yearn to be around other people and people watch, um, and so they really are used year round. And it's amazing to me that we ever weren't doing that. It's really such an impactful thing. So in addition to s'mores nights, we have a couple bigger events in the winter, and this is our market. So again, the fire pits are used. Markets are just, they're a no-brainer. They're a banger. They draw people. They make for good people watching. And my favorite is when we do an event that invites the kind of lingering that I love. And so I just was delighted by this moment of this gentleman that brought a book, and he was sitting by the fire, and he's at this market, but he just wants to be around other people. I mean, you can imagine it'd be a lot more comfortable to be on your couch reading a book, but we have this human desire to share space with other people, and this is a great place to do that doesn't cost any money. So this is like what I hope for with all of our events, is this kind of vibe. Um, okay, so that's our events, and I'm happy to take questions about that afterward, but I'm going to move over to talk about our operations work. So I think of our events and any public events as in this placemaking world as kind of punctuating the language of placemaking. Like, yes, they're great, they're fun, they show that the space is being cared for by somebody, and that it invites people in for that hour or 2 hours, but the event is only an hour or 2 hours. Even when you do 200 events like we do, that's maybe what, like 300 or 400 hours of activity in a whole year. But the public space is live 24/7, and so I think our most important work is the operations work you know that's filling in every gap that the activities and events aren't filling. Um, And so our operations includes all of our amenities, which all this furniture that you're seeing here is all movable. But we also have string lights, and we have gardens, and we have free Wi-Fi. Um, and so those are really important offerings that I think invite people to linger. And ultimately, we're doing all this to cultivate vibrancy through public life. So, to me, this is a vibrant public space. It's not totally full, but there's tons of people sitting around and sharing space and keeping an eye on the park. Um, and our operations work is also a chance for us to express a display of care, to show that the space is cared for. So every morning we have someone, what I call wake up the park. So you kind of make sure the furniture looks nice and intentional. You open the umbrellas up, you maybe pick up a little bit of trash, that sort of thing. And then to tuck in the park is basically the inverse of that. You put the umbrellas down, you tuck the chairs back in. But importantly, you'll notice that I didn't describe putting any furniture away. And believe it or not, we leave our furniture out, our movable furniture. We leave it out untethered and not locked up and not put away. And it does a few things. I mean, number one, I think you could argue economically it would cost more to hire someone to do all that than it would to maybe lose a couple of $100 worth of furniture a year or something. Um, But the bigger thing to me is it develops this real sense of trust with the community and co-ownership, where it's like, this isn't Friends of Congress Square Parks furniture that we let you have for 8 hours a day or whatever. This is everyone's furniture, and we take care of it. Like, yeah, we bought it, but we are just the caretakers of our kind of commons here. Um, and we, 5 years in, I think we've had 3 or 4 pieces of furniture stolen in 5 years, and I think we recovered two of those, and two of them were just chairs. Um, so I'm a big proponent of that. If it works, it does require a certain level of co-ownership that's already come to be, I think, and trust. But that's what we work toward. We work toward cultivating regulars and kind of mayors of the space who are almost like the babysitter or the lifeguard of the space. Luckily, we're surrounded by a good amount of residential, so we have folks for whom this is essentially their backyard. But those regulars and kind of mayors, um, they really do all the work for us. I mean, they really look after the space. Again, it's live 24/7, and we can't always be there. Um, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to try to sprint through a diatribe about seating, because seating is where all the real mechanics happen of good public space, in my opinion. So again, do events, but if you nail the seating, it does a lot of the organic programming and public life work for you. So some basic tenets that I believe to be true is that malleable and not prescriptive seating is the best. So stuff that can be used in a variety of ways. Even on the two smaller photos here, you'll see our benches, and they're shaped in these kind of fun, weird angles. And I've seen a bench accommodate a group of like 8 art students, but they can also be great for snuggling up. You can move the bench in the shade and get comfortable, or you can people watch and have your dog on the bench while you read the newspaper. That's one of our regulars actually right there. Um, and by having movable furniture, you can also have someone in a wheelchair play chess with somebody who needs a seat. It's by allowing it to be malleable, whether it's being movable or just being kind of accommodating to various ways of using the furniture, you're allowing for all sorts of activity and all sorts of personalities as well. Some days you're feeling social and you want to be right up kind of intimately near other people, or sometimes you're feeling more shy and you want your seat to be observing space and observing people, but maybe not interacting. And so it's really shooting for malleability and not prescriptive seating that really assigns you to one way of being is the biggest bang for your buck you're going to get. Um, and then seating that invites lingering and is comfortable. So being able to be in the sun or in the shade is really great, depending on the day and the weather. I also find, seating that has a back, you need at least some seating that has a back, so that you can really rest and maybe sit down with a book for a good long time. Our Adirondacks are really inviting for that. That's my favorite place to sit and read. A good view is crucial, and importantly, most people just want to watch other people. It's just a truism. And so you want to have a view of other people, of the street life. And people love to sit at the edges. That's something I've learned to be really true. I think it's kind of a lizard brain thing. We want our backs protected and we want to survey the landscape. But you can see it expressed all over the place. And these are two photos I took from my neighborhood of people that, wanted seating where there was none. And so they made their own. And you'll notice that they're both at edges looking out at the street. And those weren't put there by some city planner or landscape designer. That's just a person knowing where they want to sit. I think that tells you everything about how we like to sit and look in public space. Um, and also, I would say look to the stoop. This is from Philly. And I mean, stoop seating has it all. We have stairs in our park, and they're shockingly popular, more so than even the seating. When we have concerts and stuff, people would rather be on the stairs. They're kind of this transitive space. Again, they're super malleable. You kind of spread out and make it your own. And I think we've known how to do seating for a long time. And really briefly, this was from a trip to Boston, and this are all in the same neighborhood. This is all from Brookline, and there's three ways that these benches are positioned on the street that I think is fascinating. They're all different, and I think only one of them gets it right. So on the left, you'll have a bench that has its back to the street, and you're kind of like forced to be right up against anyone using the sidewalk, which I find to be, as a mostly shy person, that's way too intimate for me, and I would never. The middle one, I don't. The view is toward the street, but your back is to the people, and you're not really on an edge, and you're also forced to be a couple inches from parked cars. I find that fascinating. I'm not exactly sure what that gentleman is spending his time looking at, but at least he's sitting there. And then lastly, just having a bench up on the edge, looking at the street. I think that's the way to go. I was just fascinated by the fact that there's clearly no uniform design idea in Brookline about where to put benches. Um, and then quickly, some not some other spaces here with great seating. On the left is Love Park in Philly. There's a lot to look at. They're super comfortable. You even have a footrest that you can move. So it's a great space, and really invites lingering to me. And on the right there is Milk Street here in Portland in the Old Port. Just to show you, I mean, some simple picnic tables really get the job done. You can sit on them a ton of different ways, and obviously they're great for doing work on your laptop or eating or whatever. So there's a lot of ways to tackle this. And then one of my favorites, this is from a small town in Maine called Bridgeton, and this is on the main street. This is the little kind of courtyard in front of their public library. To me, one of the most accessible public spaces in the state of Maine. Super small. I think there's only three of these sets of tables, or maybe there's four. Um, but they have Wi-Fi. You can sit in your laptop. You can move the seating. There's some shade from the trees. There's stairs on the library as well that you can sit on. You can look out at the street and people watch. And importantly, you'll see the kind of the kid in the red hat in the back there, and those are like these wavy wooden structure. It's great for seating or for playing on and climbing on or laying on or whatever. It's just so accommodating for all sorts of activity. The one thumbs down for me on this is there's a no loitering sign on the library, which is essentially what you do in public space. So I'm a little bit outside of that sign. I think this is a great public space. Um, and so wrap it all up, like this is what we strive for in Congress Square Park. All of our seating, um, being able to be seating on the edge of the space, have it be movable all the time, develop this sense of co-ownership, and just inviting people to really treat it like their living room and their backyard, and to share space together is what it's all about. So I'm going to stop there and take questions.
Thank you so much, CJ. This is great. I feel like so much to talk about. I know one thing you and I had discussed that you didn't address directly in your presentation, but other than the I guess the fear of having the furniture be stolen is
Mm.
all of the but we can't because, right? So can you talk for a minute about some of the common like like reasons people give you why, why they can't do this and what you say to them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm on the advisory council here in Maine for the Maine Downtown Center, and my role mostly is to, you know, we visit all these rural towns all around the state, and so they're every shape and size, many much smaller than Bridgeton, where it's like literally a few storefronts, and like one stoplight or whatever, that kind of place. Um, and in those communities too, I'm trying to kind of share this movement, this theory and philosophy of placemaking. And I do get well, we don't really have a space for that, we don't have a budget for that, we don't have a need for that. And that's one of the biggest we can't is almost like we just don't have the material goods that it takes to do this. And again, I would posit that, like, if you create a little bit of space and you for people to hang out together, that doesn't cost money, and you even just have some seating. It can literally be, if you build a couple of benches and you orient them the right way in the right place, you can create a genuine third place just with a couple benches, truly. um, I mean, grander is better, but it takes so little to start something. um, and I think the other key thing here is it's always an experiment, and you can try something really, there's the lighter, quicker, cheaper kind of mode of operating in the placemaking world. And so you can have a super tiny budget and try something for 3 months. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, and you evaluate why and you adjust. But I think it's such an important thing because it really is what we have to build genuine community, that it's worth little experiments and investments. Um, so I think that's what I would say, at least to that kind of concern.
And one of the other things you and I talked about was serving the unhoused population. And um, could you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a touchy thing, of course, and it looks different in every community. And here in Portland, we've had a pretty serious, housing result of like housing crisis, and just like our unhoused population downtown is usually quite high. It's different year to year. But as a public space, we see a lot of those folks. And my general thought on that approach is, first and foremost, they are as part of the community as I am, and you are, and anyone is. Um, and a public, like every human being, in order to be alive, we take up space and we have to be somewhere. And these are folks that don't have a private home in which to exist and take up space. And so then the public space becomes their only means of existing, really. And I think it's every public space's duty to accommodate the community. And if you know, just to say, like, I think you need that thought in the back of your head when deciding how to respond to these human beings that need a place to exist. And so we try to accommodate the whole community, including our unhoused friends. And the Little Free Library actually goes a long way to creating a sense of welcome. And in my mind, um, unless I think any public space becomes sort of privatized if it's dominated by any particular group, whether it's, if I were to be walking in New York and I came across a small plaza that was completely full of like businessmen in suits, you can see how I'm dressed. I would be a little bit like, "Ooh, this is not my space. This is someone else's space." And so, no matter who it is, I think you want to make sure that every public space reflects the community and the diversity of the community. And so, all to say, like, unless Congress Square Park was completely dominated by any particular group and people are sharing the space together, there's really nothing amiss to me. And you just want to create a welcoming space for everyone to exist because, again, we all take up space and need a place to take up space.
Have you ever encountered an individual having a mental health crisis, like during a program, and
Oh, yeah.
um,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
how do you advise your volunteers on that?
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, it's a reality that comes with, I think, being a public space. We have. uh, the city actually produces a little card of emergency numbers uh, for various particular types of things you need to make a call for. So we equip volunteers with those, and um, yeah, it comes to that sometimes. Often, um, my first thing is just to kind of evaluate whether a person or a situation is actually a threat or if it's just uncomfortable. I think sometimes we confuse the two. Um, and you just kind of go from there. And then you ask if they need help, and then you call the right place. Or obviously, sometimes you just have to make a call and not approach somebody as well. But that's the reality that comes with it. And I will say, um, again, this sense of co-ownership and like sharing space together. Some of our events, I remember one in particular, we had a dance, I think last summer, like a swing dance. There's tons of people. And there was one gentleman that was like clearly drunk that was sort of like stumbling around toward the front. And I was like kind of getting ready to either go approach him or, kind of evaluating what to do. And then people that are in the event just like helped take care of this guy and make sure he was okay and kind of walk him off to the side. They're on their own. I mean, like, if you can kind of create that vibe where it doesn't need to have like a real babysitter, either the space itself or at an event, and you can really just trust the public to help level itself out as well. So,
I have just a quick question.
yeah,
So, for these urban interventions, you are not, do you have to go through a permit process in Portland?
it's a great question. We are lucky. So, we've been doing this for like 13 years. And so we've had an MOU with the city of Portland. And that kind of lays out more of the operational stuff. So, like, it kind of almost itemizes, like, Friends of Congress Square Park does, the gardening and takes care of the string lighting and this and this and this. And the city of Portland comes and grabs the trash and, like, takes care of the hardscape stuff. So we have that, which goes a long way. And then we, rather than having to get a permit for every single event that we do, because we need a lot, we have like a blanket festival permit. And so it used to be like, they'd be like, Friends of Congress Park is holding a festival from May through October and just kind of covers all of our stuff. Now that we do winter programming, they've made it just a year-round festival permit. But it's incredibly helpful, and it makes it easier for us to say yes to people's event ideas, such that even people may approach the city to get a permit to do an event in our park, because you can do that. Um, and the city will sometimes direct them to us, and we'll just kind of help them put their event on and enable in that way. Um,
And
it's great.
since
It would be
Portland, oh,
what's that?
since Portland is quite cold a lot of the year, and so is Newport, I noticed. So for the s'mores thing, is that considered an open flame? Like to keep people warm in public spaces? I think we struggle a little bit.
Yeah, I forget now. It's been a few years since I had to like work that out. But ours is just propane tanks. So it's the same as like any restaurant that has a little fire pit outside, and so the fire hazards are essentially none. Um, so we don't have to worry about any kind of additional permitting or anything for those. I will say it's not as good roasting. Like if you really want to do small night right, I think having like a real proper fire pit would be best, but it is what it is.
Hey, CJ. Thank you so much. That was brilliant. I've been really looking forward to this. This is Katie. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida.
Hey,
Um,
Katie.
hey, I don't know if you went over it, but do you mind sharing what your annual operating budget is? And then also, are there any districts that overlay in yours? Like, is there a bid that overlaps yours? What's that partnership look like? And then just in terms of the budget, are you spending down the money, or like if someone pops up and says, "Hey, I want to come and I just need 300 for insurance," you kind of know you have it and you spend that down. Can you tell me kind of how you manage if funds need to flow to folks who want to come into your space?
Yeah, I can definitely answer the first two. I think I can answer the third. So first of all, our annual operating is around $100,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I said, we're super scrappy, and we rely a lot on the community coming with these great events that we can help empower. So we punch way above our budget weight because of the community that we're in.
Mhm.
And we do have a downtown improvement district, Portland downtown, and we are in their purview. We have a great relationship with them. I think we always have, basically. Their executive director is on our board, actually, and um, yeah, I mean, they see us as doing some of the work that they would wish they could do. So they have a new ambassador program, and they've been really helpful. And so they help us with some of our operations stuff, and it's a really good partnership. I would hope that any placemaking project like us that exists in a place with a bid or a did would at least aim to have the same kind of tight communication and partnership, because it goes a really, really long way.
Okay.
And then can you repeat your last question? I can.
Yeah. So, of that 100,000, how much is spent on the activations? And do you
Mm,
have wiggle room where, like, I know people are coming in, like the market that was popped up, the artists, they didn't really need much, right? You have insurance on the park already. But
right.
if someone comes to you with an idea and they literally need less than 1,000, do you have like a slush fund or like a little wiggle room? And then how do you manage that, knowing, is one gonna come? Are 40 gonna come?
Right. It's a great question. We so we have about, with $100,000, something like 20,000 is goes directly to, musicians or performers or event organizers or what have you. So about a fifth of our budget, and then, really, uh, I would consider, like, probably the bulk of my staff time is directed toward coordinating and planning events. So that's kind of how we put our resources toward that. I do try to leave some wiggle room in the programming budget for things that come up. We do most of our planning for the whole year, like right now, like March, April. Um, but inevitably in a 6 month stretch, like, people come to us with stuff that I want to be able to host. So I try to leave a couple $1,000s um, in our programming budget to host those. But sometimes we have to, depending on what people's needs are, we may have to say no if they come to us in, July, or we
Got
say, let's make this happen next year, and we'll, like, put some money aside for that.
got you. Thank you so much. I really
Yeah, of
appreciate that. Great
course.
presentation.
We have a couple questions in the chat, and one of them here: if you were starting from scratch with a vacant, undeveloped parcel, what would be your top items and events to start out and activate a new public space? And I know you already said benches, so beyond benches.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that stage, I would ask the community what they want. I would, you know, virtually and in person and everything, and you have a sense of, what your successful events are likely to be based on interest from the community, but you also get a chance to have some buy-in right out the gate. Maybe some people want to host some of the things that they're yearning to see. So I would start by asking the community what they want, and that would probably include um, an opportunity to get a sense of like seating. I mean, I'm all for, like, I would just probably pop some. If you popped 4 picnic tables in an empty lot, you'll get a little bit of activation. I think that'd be great. Um, and you can work toward building out a calendar based on community input. But yeah, pop some picnic tables down, baby. That's all you need.
Right. Thanks. Um, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the markets, in that, are you talking a farmer's market, art market? Is it a combo?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would love to do farmers markets. We have a really, really lovely farmers market here in Portland, and they kind of have a, a, a firm grasp on the whole scene here, which is great, and also kind of a bummer because it makes it harder to do kind of satellite ones that are smaller. But so our markets are mostly maker markets. We do have some food and beverage. I think if you're doing a market and you're thinking about doing something like this, very few things attract people like food. So if you can have some hot food or whatever, that's great to include. So I try to include those. We have two monthly markets, one that I organize and one that my friend Robin organizes, which is she runs the Queer Makers Market, which is so lovely. Just packs the park full of people, and it really like the whole the community shows up, and it's a lot of socializing, and it's so great. And we have hours, so we have like two markets a month. Um, and it's a lot of makers for us. It's a lot of makers. And one thing I do that I think lends itself toward this idea of co-ownership and belonging is we don't, even though we could, like, again, our budget, you know how tiny our budget is now, we don't charge a fee for vendors. We like invite people to donate back to us some of their day's earnings if they want to, but it enables us to have people that are just starting out that can't really put $100 down on a market day or whatever. And it just develops this relationship. And because of the nature of our organization, a relationship to us is kind of also a relationship to the space. And so yeah. And so, but you get these lovely things like that photo of the kind of impromptu market popping up. So I'm all about it. People do donate back to us, but then it's kind of because it's a choice. It's like creating like an organic buy-in into what we do, and I think that's really lovely too. So that's yeah. Any other questions
Cool.
about the market? Is that enough rambling about it?
Well, I know we're starting to run out of time, and I see Alex has raised his hand many times, so I want to get to him next.
Thanks. CJ, so good to see you.
Yes, you.
We miss you in Rhode Island.
Oh,
And it's so great to see all the wonderful things you're doing in Congress Square Park. My question was about burnout and how the work you're doing is super draining. And how you manage that because you're out there 200 days a year, you know, supporting events. And I remember when in fact, the very month when you and I started Tour de Tentacle in Providence in 2014 was Bike Month, and I was organizing like an event every day for a month, and it's so exhausting. So how do you manage that for yourself, and how can other managers of public space learn from your experience?
oh my gosh. What a great question. I'm still figuring it out. Is the first answer. I've learned to say no to things or to find ways in which I can avoid having to be there in person. So, which also again kind of lends itself towards the co-ownership. So we have like a whole bunch of um, volunteers on our programming committee, and many of them will dream up an event or be interested in hosting something, and I'll be like, "Great, can you run it?" And they're almost always like, "Yeah, of course, that's easy." And then I don't have to be there, and I can squeeze in some days of rest in the summer. So all to say, like, if you do volunteerism right, I think you can help yourself avoid burnout in the process. Um, the most burnouty thing for me is just that I care so much that I'm always thinking about this stuff. But even then, I try to, you build the right team around you, and you can kind of have some faith that things are being taken care of without you having to actively be involved. So those are probably basically like get some good volunteers, and you can ease the burnout a little bit.
Well, Caroline, your hand is up too.
Okay. Hi, CJ. So I'm just curious as a wait, I can't handle the echo inside of these things. Um, what I have, picture Reservoir Triangle in Providence. I'm a resident here, and I keep on wanting to just do something, just to try something. What would be your opinion on asking permission versus asking forgiveness?
Ooh,
Can you answer that question on a public forum?
oh, in a non-legally binding way. It's a great question. I mean, sometimes I do stuff and I just figure I'll ask for permission if it comes up, honestly, even just in the park. So I would say, first of all, it's like really case by case. It depends. My first answer is like, it depends. But, you know, I'll give you a for instance, uh, you see all these, and I see it here in Portland, but like the kind of DIY bus stop bench, right? It's like unsanctioned people didn't ask for permission. They're just like, we need a bench here. City's not giving us one, and so I'm going to build one and put it out and tie it to the thing. And like, that's a case where I'd be like, well, yeah, you don't ask for permission to do that because you're pretty sure they would say no, and the value outweighs whatever, rules it's breaking. Um, like doing a block party without getting the road officially closed. Like, I don't know about that. Like putting out a picnic table, I think pretty great. I think, I think of also the famous uh, story back in Providence, of the plungers to along the bike lane, the not yet protected bike lane, and that was certainly not asking for permission, but it kind of helped move the ball along a little bit or bring some attention to that issue. And so I think it really depends. The punk energy in me says ask for permission later, but don't cause too much of a scene or bring harm.
Thanks, CJ.
Awesome. Any last question as we're running out of time here? Scott,
If
you
nobody
win,
else
you win the
is
lottery.
nobody else is raising their hand, great to see you,
Hey
CJ.
Scott, good to see you.
Terrific presentation. Underscores underscores how much we miss you, but also how great you are. So volunteers, and I saw Tony in the chat saying there could be a whole session probably on how you manage volunteers, recruit them, and manage them effectively. But do you have kind of a core of volunteers that are like super volunteers that are almost like part-time staff? Because it's a volunteer doesn't feel usually the sense of responsibility and doesn't have the level of reliability of a paid person. So how do you kind of manage that, get around that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we have our board and we have three different committees. Each group is more or less six people. Like our board is like eight people. Each committee is a pretty small handful. And most of them, at this point, like I tried different things for a while and I think in the realm of public space, the beauty is you can find people that actually use the public space and engage them. Um, at least with us, when it's like a singular location. And so a lot of our board members are people that were just in the park all the time that are smart and connected and really care. And they live like a block from the park. And so when you kind of invite them to get in on, to get in the kitchen with you on that level, like they're already sort of mayors of the park. So I would say find your mayors, if you're talking about public space in particular, um, that are already kind of bought into the whole concept, and then just ask them if they'll do, X number of tasks or whatever. Um, those have been
Would
my most
would you
successful
say would
volunteers.
you say you have any volunteers who you can count on for 10 hours or more a week? Is there that level of intensity from some of them, would you say?
Yeah, the tricky thing is, case by case, like people have different levels of demanding jobs or
Yeah, of course.
families or whatever. So it's kind of case by case. But again, the folks that, again, for public space at least, if they live nearby, um, it's easy for them to carve out a little bit of time here and there. We do have a couple folks like that, and luckily they both don't have kids, and they live really close and they really care. So they'll find ways to carve out
Yeah,
X number of hours a week and stuff.
great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, CJ, thank you so much for being with us today. It was so wonderful to have you for so many reasons, especially hearing about your thought process and your philosophies, as well as like the actual on the ground what you're doing is super helpful for all of us. Where can people find you, or where are you speaking next? Maybe you want to share?
Yeah. First of all, I mean, thank you again for having me. Second of all, everyone's invited to reach out to me anytime. I love talking about this stuff. I'm happy to help with all sorts of placemaking projects. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can go to congressssquarepark.org and shoot me an email and just look at what we're doing. You can message us on Instagram at Congress Square. For anyone going, I will be uh, talking about our work at the International Placemaking Week conference in Detroit in late June. So I'm excited to do that. But I invite questions anytime.
Awesome. All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming. We're at time, but I hope you will join us back next month and join us for other future events and be in touch. So thank you so much, CJ. Thank you to all for being here today.
Thank you.
Great. You want to hit stop, Evelyn, on the recording?